My sister is playing Minecraft next door. This could not be at a more inconvenient time. Okay, whatever. Let's do it anyway. We're doing the movies from the 50s and 60s today. Cinderella is first. Enjoy. Everyone knows the story of Cinderella. With that being said, I really did not know the story of Cinderella. I had never actually watched it before, and it was very different from what I expected, but maybe that had something to do with half the movie being this stupid Tom and Jerry subplot between the mice and this stupid Cheshire prototype. And on the topic of the mice, I hate them. The mice are just so unbelievably annoying. It's like worse than the chipmunks. It's like the chipmunks on steroids. If I hear zook zook one more time, I'm gonna zook and kill somebody, I swear. So, how much of the story actually involved Cinderella? Well, not that much, and simultaneously too much. She just looks off. Her hair is strange, her eyes are creepy, she's kind of just a loser. She's a jerk to everyone, whether it's to her dog, or to her cat, or to the mice, or to the birds, or her incredibly talented stepsisters, which is honestly in line with her character from Once Upon a Time. I watched through that show once, and I do vaguely remember a plotline where she sold her baby without telling her husband and then killed him in the woods or something like that. As for the other characters, they're fine. Similarly to the prince in Snow White, unnamed Prince is very much a cardboard cutout that moves the plot along, because, we couldn't possibly have any character development for him. We're much too busy screwing around with the mice for 30 minutes! I mean, this takes love at first sight to a whole new level. Not only did Cinderella not bother to figure out she was talking to the prince the whole time, but she fell in love with him before either of them spoke to each other. Even Prince Florian had a dramatic song to sing for Snow White. This is nothing. The fairy godmother is pretty cool, and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is indeed a certified hood classic. And I guess I can take this opportunity to mention the other songs. They suck. That's it. And the Wicked Stepmother is sufficiently wicked, although I think she turns into a frog at some point in the Cinderella cinematic universe. I don't really know. The characters in general were just kind of a mixed bag. Well, what about the animation? Has it stepped up? Yeah, I would say so. Other than Cinderella and the stepmother's hair, and also every shot of the kingdom and the castle. And as for the plot, I have two confusing plot holes to bring up. First, the shoe size. I know people have pointed this out before, but you really expect me to believe that no fair maiden in the land, see what I did there, has her shoe size? I think the hell not. Secondly, and more importantly, the fairy godmother's spell. If she has the power to transfigure anything, and possibly create sentience, surely she could have used her power to end Cinderella's suffering at some point over the 15 or so years that she was basically enslaved. And if she could do that, surely she could do it for more than 3 hours? I mean, it's already dark by that point, and I don't know where they live, but it's gotta be at least like 9 p.m., right? So, what if it never turns midnight? What if you go into a different time zone? Does the spell then run out when the clock strikes 11, or do you get an extra hour? Or, what if you do what Phineas and Ferb did, and keep moving around the world so it's always daylight, and more importantly, so it never strikes midnight? Would the spell be infinite? Didn't think about that now, did you? Of course you didn't. Probably only I put this much thought into this movie. Honestly, the plot in general was just really average. Most of the time I was basically just like, oh, so that's what that Cinderella story reference was. Cinderella story is, of course, a far superior, yet still incredibly bad, yet still widely appreciated for some reason, movie. Overall, what did this movie teach me about the world? Well, I appreciate how the movie tries to establish important messages for little girls, like how you can be whatever you want to be. Oh, and of course,
leave the sewing to the women.
Oh my, how incredibly nuanced. This movie goes in second place, below Ichabod and Mr. Toad and above Dumbo. Say what you will about Ichabod being above this, but at least it was to the point. Half of this supposedly Cinderella movie was very much just The Secret Life of Pets. Still though, I didn't hate it. It was okay. And the next movie is Alice in Wonderland. Dear God, I don't want to do this, it looks so bad. But it must be done. Wait, must it? Who decided that? Oh yeah, I did. Damn it.
Hi mate, did the trolley treat you nice?
It might seem like I have less to say for this movie, but that is only because I can sum up my hatred fairly quickly. I was right, this movie's bad. Like, unbelievably bad. I don't even know where to start with this monstrosity. I guess we could talk about Alice. We are once again continuing the streak of having a boring-ass protagonist. She looks ugly, she complains about stupid stuff, and she herself appears to be quite stupid as well. Also, she's British, which surprised me for some reason. I did watch the live-action Alice in Wonderland, both of them actually, so I know I should have expected it, but I didn't, and it's really annoying. Her voice acting is really bad. And since we talked about Alice, how about Wonderland? I can't really fault the animation at all, and it surprisingly doesn't look that dated. Unfortunately, this movie has essentially zero plot whatsoever, and is perhaps the worst case of only existing to show off animation so far. Even worse than Fantasia, for Christ's sake. Well, maybe. None of the songs are memorable, and honestly, same thing with the characters. Sure, I know of Tweedledum and Tweedledee and the Cheshire Cat, and the White Rabbit and the Mad Hatter and the Queen of Hearts. I'm not gonna edit them all on screen, that takes too long. You know what they look like. Truth be told, I don't really care about any of them, because they're just vessels for showing off, ooh, pretty pictures, wow. And of course, the true nature of Wonderland is absolutely stupid. To explain this best I can, we must delve deep into my broken past. When I was in 2nd grade, we had a project where we had to write a story, dress up, and act it out in front of the class. The project itself was dumb, but that's not the point. A whopping 85%, give or take, of all the stories ended with, and it was all a dream, because no duh, we were like 8. And my teacher basically went absolutely ballistic and accused everyone of cheating off of everyone else, which of course makes no sense. Point is, I kinda get where she was coming from now, because it's literally the laziest thing you can do. So, was this movie written by a bunch of 8-year-olds? Absolutely. This movie is about 80 minutes long, yes? Guess how long it took me to finish? Go on, guess. Got your answer? It took 6 hours! I wasted a whole freaking day on this abomination, and I can't even say that it was worth it. I don't care if it's this giant departure from the books, I just want something watchable, which I did not get at all. This movie goes below Bambi and above Fantasia. Yeah, it's that bad. If you've never seen this movie, the best advice I can give is to never go near it. If you have seen this movie, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do for you now. So, the first movie was decent and 2nd from the top, and the second movie was horrible and 3rd from the bottom. By golly gee, I wonder where the next one's gonna go.
I'm just here to do the sex offender shuffle.
So obviously, without context, that song choice might seem a little strange, but I promise, it's gonna make sense. So you know how dogs are supposed to be the best judges of character? Well, guess what the Darlene's dog does the first time she sees Peter Pan? She starts barking. She does not trust him, and rightfully so, because Peter Pan is the most despicable character that we have seen so far. I could spend hours listing off this demon's crimes, and that is precisely what I am going to do. Firstly, Peter Pan looks like a sex offender. I'm pretty sure he is a sex offender. He kidnaps children from their homes and never lets them see their families again. I'm pretty sure he's immortal, and yet he is exclusively interested in minors. And to make matters worse, in the book, this was based off of every time he took a breath, an adult died. It's pretty likely that that's still the case, because this man is a freaking criminal. He literally has an army of mentally unstable children at his disposal. He could declare war on the surface dwellers whenever the hell he felt like it, and nobody would be any the wiser. Seriously though, every other freaking line by Peter is literally just loaded with so much sexual tension and misogyny and so many other indescribable things. At one point, he literally just says,
Girls talk too much.
And I would have been thoroughly unsurprised if he had looked straight into the camera and said, "Any underage girls watching this, please come to this address and together we can start a race war." I legitimately cannot fathom the extent of this thing's crimes against humanity and the world order. But for some inexplicable reason, everybody treats this pedophile like he's a goddamn saint, and I don't know why. The worst case of this is definitely Tinkerbell, who I actually forgot was in this until I saw her for the first time, and then started internally sobbing for half an hour. Every time she's in frame, she's simping for Peter so hard, and it just hurts to watch. What's even more depressing is the fact that Peter 100% knows this and uses it to his advantage whenever he wants. But wait, Tinkerbell actually dies at the end of this movie. Or maybe she doesn't, they never say. And that's my point. She literally explodes next to a frickin' bomb, and Peter is like, damn. Oh well, let me go find that Native American princess and lead her toward a dark room somewhere. Pretty sure she was a minor. And while we're on the subject of Native Americans, oh boy, that racism warning at the start of the movie is back again, and it was definitely not lying. The Native American representation in this movie is laughably bad, or at least it would be if racism was funny, which it is in fact not. Seriously, they're like freaking cannibals in this movie. They're pink. I don't think the animators really understood the concept of Native Americans and the fact that they were, in fact, not like an alien race. Because I think they just heard the phrase Redskins, and they're like, yep, got it, Redskins, that's what we needed. And they just ran with it, and kept running, and running, and running, until we ended up with this. But, okay, there's gotta be some good stuff, right? Well, sure. Captain Hook remains incredibly handsome, Mr. Smee is still canonically a sex god, and legends say that the crocodile is still ticking and talking to this very day. As for Wendy, she's Alice, and I don't mean that metaphorically, she's quite literally Alice. They look the same, sound the same, they're voiced by the same girl. Bad. The animation is actually not bad. It's pretty good. Neverland looks nice, most of the designs look nice, it's overall pretty nice, except for the racisms. And some of the songs are fairly okay, although I can't say I thought about anything after the movie was done. For me, the best part of this movie was flashing back to my childhood of watching Jake and the Neverland Pirates. Man, that was a good show, and its plot was certainly better than this movie's. The plot is really dumb. The Shadow is stupid, the thing with Tiger Lily is stupid, Peter Pan and his giant human trafficking ring is stupid, but hey, at least there's a plot, no matter how basic and boring it may be. So that raises it in the rankings slightly, but not too much, of course. So where does it go? Well, I'm putting it below Saludos Amigos and above Bambi. I know I put Bambi as low as it was because there was no magic, but I think I actually put it that low because its lack of magic created a sort of void that they didn't refill with anything else. The magic was the only thing that kept the previous movies even remotely interesting, and that's why Bambi had an hour of nothing. And if you want to know more, watch the video, although I don't recommend it because it was really bad. This movie, despite its magic, came dangerously close to making me feel even more empty than that. It's a movie about deer. This was almost worse. Not a particularly good sign, but oh well. I've never actually watched this next movie from start to finish, but I did watch the live-action remake when it came out because it was one of the first Disney Plus originals of all time. Now there are too many. That one was bad, these ones are bad. Despite this next movie's lack of magic, I have a feeling it's gonna have some serious potential.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore.
This movie is very aggressively fine. No more, no less. For example, the Siamese cats. Not sure if I need to say anything. It's, not the best. However, the song is a jam, so we have a net worth of fine, although leaning towards bad, because racism is not that great. As for the characters, they're fairly fine. Lady is kind of annoying, but she barely talks, until she does, and then it's annoying again. So, whatever, it's fine. As for Tramp, let me just explain. So Tramp calls her a kid, basically, like, a lot, and then he falls in love with her, so that's basically definitive proof of pedophilia, right? Like Peter Pan lady is twice in a row. However, he's a ladies' man, and they make it perfectly clear that he dates all the women he can find, so... Is that better or worse? I don't know. It's fine. The only thing that's more than fine is the animation. Seriously, it looks so unbelievably real. Pick any scene, and it's amazing. We'll talk about this more when we get to the 101 Dalmatians segment, but all you need to know for now is that we're about to hit a 2D animation dark age that results in uglier movies. And although it's fixed during the Renaissance, so it doesn't look as bad, it's never brought back up to the level of detail of before. So, for now, let's just appreciate how epic this looks. Unfortunately, the plot is very slow, and while the animation makes it less annoying, it's still not great, so that's kinda cool, I guess. Fine, one might say. But for real, lots of stuff goes on too long, like the pound thing. I don't care about this philosopher Greyhound guy. Stop giving me dumb life lessons and go away. The part where we meet the other dogs is kind of long too. I mean, the dogs themselves are fine, like that old reliable joke is pretty good. Reliable, one might say. Did I just make the same joke twice? It goes on for a very, very long while. And then there's the whole thing with the baby, which gets stretched out into like 10 minutes, which isn't ideal. And also, what the hell is going on with this baby? Why is it in so much cursed detail? Please stop. Get rid of this. Point is, they could have shaved like 20 minutes of filler off, and it still would have counted as a feature film. And those 20 minutes could have been done anywhere. The less drawing that the animators have to do, the better, considering that this movie was basically drawn 2 separate times, one for widescreen and one for full screen. I think. Maybe that's for something else, but my point still stands. I would definitely be sick of dogs after a year of drying them in a sweaty office building in frickin' California. In general, this movie gives me a lot of questions. Like, why is the Scottish dog very likely a domestic terrorist? Is he? I don't know, he just gives me that vibe. Why is Tramp okay with seeing his species behind glass? Like, what if you were walking down the street and you go past your local Orange Julius or whatever and see some human infants in a display case and just think, huh, okay, that's normal. Also, why does Tramp call Lady Pidge? What is the impetus for this? And finally, Jim Deere and Darling. This broke me. So, at first the wife was always calling her husband Jim dear, and he was always calling her darling, and I thought it was just a thing that couples do, and it's not like I would know anyway, because I'm currently sitting in a room by myself making a YouTube video. But then the other dogs start calling him Jim dear, and since they're probably not also in a committed relationship with the man in question, something else was happening here. After some quick 5-second research, I determined that Deer was the family's last name. Lady's full name is Lady Deer, which is just so cringy. It actually gets worse though, because then people start calling the wife Darling, and they're probably not in a committed relationship with her, which means that her real name is Darling Deer. This leads to many questions, such as, why does everybody have to say Jim Deer's full name first and last every single time they address him? What am I meant to think about this? This movie goes below Make Mine Music and above Snow White. Congratulations on being the most frustratingly fine movie of all time. The next movie, however, is neither frustrating nor fine. Actually, that makes it sound bad, because, like, it's not fine. It's not fine, but it's not bad. It's good. So it's good, but it's not fine, because it's more than fine. So technically it's not fine, but it also is fine, but it's not. You know what? Never mind.
Poison?
No. Cursed? No. Kidnapped or enslaved?
No, are you guys okay? Should I call the police?
What a movie. Surprisingly interesting, really well animated, and an overall good job of showing how to do basically everything. I don't really know where to start. How about the animation? It's good. If I had to pick something to complain about, it would be how strange crowds of people can look. Mostly the one at the beginning. Sometimes the outlines just felt a bit too outline-ish. I don't know how to describe it really, but it's honestly fine, and it makes sense that it might look weird because they had to draw a lot of people in one frame. And also the backgrounds. What? Like, all of Maleficent's castle is just so good. And the rocks look so real, and it really annoys me because I know all the cool backgrounds are just gonna disappear now thanks to this stupid new animation process that's starting in the next movie. For now, let's just talk about Maleficent some more. She's really cool, and I always thought she was green, but it turns out she's like this weird teal blue color, which really threw me off. But hey, I'd rather that than Angelina Jolie. Seriously though, the dragon and her bird, may it rest in peace, and her epic evilness. Maleficent is amazing. And speaking of amazing, the fairies, they're amazing. They're epic, but also they give Sleeping Beauty her beauty with magic, and it's the same thing with her singing, so doesn't that defeat the purpose of her being a beauty? And then there's Prince Philip, who has like lines and stuff, so he's already the most fleshed out prince so far by like 10 miles. And Aurora, she doesn't look ugly exactly, but she always looks like she knows something that you don't, and she's always smirking about it. What is it? I need to know. Oh yeah, and she's 16. No, I don't believe you. She does not look 16. Hey, at least the one diegetic song in the whole movie that keeps getting repeated over and over is good. And the plot itself is okay too. There's a lot of filler, but at least some of it is interesting. And by some, I mean the stuff with the fairies on screen. I couldn't care less about Aurora frolicking in the woods. There's definitely, probably, maybe more plot than the last movie, but once again, you could definitely get rid of a lot of stuff and still have it count as a feature film. Dumbo was an hour and was good, Alice in Wonderland was 50% longer and was bad, case closed. Also, this movie has some really good jokes, well, like 3, but that's more than we've seen so far, so that's cool. Like, there was the servant who kept stealing wine, and the time when the one king is arguing with the other and reaches past a knife on the table to start wielding a fish, and then Philip says, "You're living in the past, this is the 14th century." They're not Oscar-winning jokes or anything, okay, but at least there's visible effort. This movie goes in 4th place, below Dumbo and above Make Mine Music. I feel like I'm committing some kind of crime by putting this movie this low, but I don't particularly care that much. However, my opinions on these next 5 movies are overwhelmingly negative. Let's see the next one, shall we?
Hey, let me get one too.
Hey, let me hold one.
Yeah, you get that right there. What the dog doing?
Really quick, let's do a throwback to a forgotten and nostalgic age of 5 seconds ago, when I said the next 5 movies would be overwhelmingly negative. 101 Dalmatians is actually not overwhelmingly negative. In fact, it's actually surprisingly good. There was a lot of weird and experimental stuff going on with this movie, and it may or may not have saved the entire studio from going bankrupt, so I guess that counts for something. Let me set the scene. Movies like Sleeping Beauty had these really detailed backgrounds, again, in case you forgot 5 seconds ago, and the characters didn't really have outlines. Someone I know described it as softer, and honestly that's basically exactly what it was. The problem with that was the cost. There were 24 frames per second, and each frame had to be hand-drawn by the animators. Sleeping Beauty had almost 1 million frames. Adjusted for inflation, it cost $60 million to make, and the movie only earned about $50 million at the box office. So, Disney realized that something needed to change. So, the Xeroxinator. I don't know the exact way it works, but it basically makes it easier to draw the frames with the trade-off of outlines. And oh boy, does this movie have outlines. Around every single object and every single person, there are faded black outlines. This means that the backgrounds are less detailed. Overall, it looks like the animation went back in time about 30 years. Some people like it, but what do I think? Meh. Sorry guys, but even though the movie is good, the weird penciled-in outlines that kinda shift around as the characters move doesn't really work for me. But there are parts of this movie that aren't the animation. How's the plot? It's okay. It changes genres a lot, but not as much as another movie. It starts as a love story, then becomes a medical drama briefly, then it becomes, I guess, a sitcom. Then it becomes a heist, then it becomes whatever this dog telegraph thing is, then it becomes a prison break, then it becomes a car chase, and then we circle back around to a love story. Once again, I didn't know what would be coming next, although that might not be a good thing. The characters are okay. Pongo and Perdita are British, right? As would be expected, given that the story takes place in London, and their children are raised in London, right? So why do they have American accents sometimes?
I like to taste. Kiss it out.
They themselves are fine, though. Cruella is an okay villain, kinda one-dimensional, but so are a lot of these villains. Horace and Jasper are cool too. I don't get why Anita is so comfortable with her husband making a hit song about how disgusting her friend is, because no human beings actually found out about her plot, right? She just ended up in a ditch on the side of the road and thought, "Aw man, guess I'll give up." This movie goes below Cinderella and above Dumbo. Honestly, I'm surprised how much I liked this one. The middle part does drag out, and the animation is a bit depressing given what came before, but it's pretty okay anyway. Just watch Cruella on Disney+, or even Once Upon a Time, although maybe not the part with Cruella actually in it. A quick Google search reminded me of that thing she could do where she breathes on animals and controls their minds. Okay. Maybe I should do a Once Upon a Time retrospective. Perhaps one day. Okay, the next movie will be overwhelmingly negative. I swear. In fact, it might be the overwhelmingly negativist movie so far. So, obviously this isn't a Disney movie, and I know the title is Silver Age Movies Ranked, but if you look at the series title, we are ranking every animated movie that I feel like. And this does happen to be the next one. Feel free to skip over it and just move on to the one right after. It should be Sword in the Stone, a considerably better movie than this. Although, some people do like this movie, and I don't know why, but anyway, let's just do it.
Oh, I wish I were dead. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo.
So do we.
The first non-Disney animated movie, other than some other worse version of Aladdin that I didn't want to touch. I wonder what it's called. You realize that changing one letter here would have made this movie way more famous. This movie is not very good. I kind of feel insulted by its existence. Let's start with the animation. You thought the animation on the last movie was a step down? Take a look at this. I have praised previous movies for having backgrounds that look like paintings. This is not what I meant. Every scene looks kind of like a budget Vincent van Gogh, but if Vincent van Gogh was 4, and it doesn't help when these cat designs are just smacked on top of it. And all of the cats as well are dumb. The orange cat, whose name I seriously don't remember, Valjean? No, I don't know. The squeaky Robespierre cat, Musette, they're all dumb. Although that one's not surprising, the Musette one, because it's strangely her only character trait. There are so many cat puns, it makes me want to die. Musette, Meowris, Moulin Rouge. Why? Also, why do all of the foreign cats have British accents? They explicitly say that Paris is 2 miles down the road, and sure enough, all the cats from Paris have French accents, as you would expect. Make it make sense. The songs are actually pretty good, maybe the only good part, but the plot is some of the worst stuff I have ever seen. I did just say that plots with lots of changes can be kind of fun, but this is meaningless. Things like 101 Dalmatians have changes that affect where the story ends up, as good stories are supposed to do. Roger has a hit song, Cruella is Somewhere, and they now own 100 dogs. This movie starts with Musette saying, "Hey, I'll go to Paris because I'll be happier," and it ends with her going to Paris and her being happier. No shocking realization that the real Paris was the friends we made along the way. Nothing. It's kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of animated movies. It's all meaningless. Except, I only know this is meaningless because I looked up that it was meaningless on Wikipedia. I didn't actually finish this movie, which is not a good sign. I finished Alice in Wonderland. I finished The Three Caballeros, which is the definitive worst movie, but not anymore. I was a lot more passionate about my hatred for The Three Caballeros, but my hatred for that movie was more shock and surprise at how much it decreased in quality over its runtime. But for this movie, other than the songs, which also decreased, the movie could not possibly get any worse because it already started out horrible and firmly stayed there until I stopped watching. And judging by Wikipedia, it wasn't gonna get any better. The Three Caballeros is a 2 out of 10. Alice in Wonderland is a 3. There is something of value there. This movie has nothing. Other than the songs, there is not a single good thing about it. And that is why this movie takes the coveted position of the worst movie so far. Let's move on as swiftly as we can. I never want to think about this again.
I pulled it out of an anvil that was on a stone in a churchyard.
The Sword and the Stone has about 3 minutes of screen time for the sword and or the stone. Do not watch this movie expecting to see a marvelous tale about overcoming great challenges and becoming king. There are a lot of minor challenges, sure, but we can't have the main character solve any of them. That would be too easy. This story is more like the fun-filled adventures of Fungus and Wizard Man. And if that's what you come in expecting, then you will enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it that much. So, might as well start with the animation. It's usually where we start. I feel like Disney simultaneously cared more and less about the animation for this movie. On the one hand, the outlines aren't nearly as intrusive as they were in 101 Dalmatians just because there are usually less objects in frame at a time, so that leads to some more coherent backgrounds, and a few shots that actually even retain the pre-Xerox realism. But, on the other hand, the pencilness of this movie was apparently increased to 11, and one of the best examples of this is at the very end. Take a look at the buttons on his coat. See how they're flickering in and out because nobody bothered to actually draw them in the whole way? Kinda takes you out of the moment a little bit. Also, this is one of the first major examples of repeating animation. Like, obviously it's happened before, but we're talking about it now, okay? Most movies try to be sneaky about it by reusing shots from other movies. Some do it successfully, like how the dance at the end of Beauty and the Beast is the same dance as the one at the end of Sleeping Beauty. Others fail, like Robin Hood. I can't give a good example because it's literally everywhere, but this movie didn't even attempt to be sneaky. They just repeat the same shot of Wart really up close where he shakes his head slightly at least 3 times by my count, It's fine if you don't notice it, but if you do, it can be very ungood. As for the character designs, they're pretty 50-50. Same thing with the characters, too. Actually, now that I think about it, the people with the worst designs are also the worst characters. I guess the next thing to do would be go through the characters to prove my point. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Merlin is epic. The best part of the whole movie. The magic stuff he does is cool, and he has a distinct-ish personality that makes him fun to watch. Madam Mim is stupid, and I don't know why she's there, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. For now, just appreciate how ugly she is. Look at her. Ew. The stupid jock brother looks dumb and is dumb, and I hate seeing him on screen. The father, however, looks amazing and is amazing, so that's something, I guess. Archimedes is indeed a character, and he's the only one who I'm really just neutral on. His design is neither good nor bad, and he as a character is neither good nor bad as well. He's a bit annoying, but it's honestly just fine. And finally, Arthur, also known as Wart, also known as the King for some reason. I dislike him. Why? Well, Exhibit A, his design, it's dumb. Exhibit B, his voice. The voice actor went through puberty during production, and they had to get another kid to do the rest. So sometimes his voice sounds squeaky, sometimes his voice sounds squeaky but in a completely different way. Sometimes he just sounds like a 7th grader trying to pull off a deep voice for his crush. And sometimes he sounds like me.
Then he must stay out every night.
I pulled it out of an anvil that was on a stone.
It's, to be generous, a disaster. Exhibit C. He doesn't deserve any of the cool stuff that happens to him. He fell into Merlin's house, like literally fell into Merlin's house, because he was destined, I guess? And then he was taught about stuff that has no application later in the movie, because it all just fills time. And then he becomes king because he's pure of heart. Let me ask you something. How many kids do you think have tried to pull the sword out of the stone? Probably 0, right? Wart only did it due to very specific circumstances. So here's my hypothesis. Any kid would be able to pull it out, because they've barely had a chance to do anything wrong. Pure of heart, baby. Now you have a king who likes to nuke puppies because he pulled a sword out of a rock when he was 4. Good job, God. Wart has absolutely 0 character arc, and that is simply because he has 0 character. In fact, this whole movie is kind of one giant identity crisis. What is it about? Like I'm asking. The whole thing with Madam Mim is played off like a climax, and yeah, the spells were creative, but it had no bearing on the plot. Nothing changed because of it. The hero's journey story doesn't even have a journey. Or even a hero. It is a little guy and a much less little guy that go around and do nothing besides swim in a pond and talk to squirrels and fly as birds and stuff. And also, can we talk about the squirrel scene? I'm not talking about the squirrel scene. I'm not gonna talk about the squirrel scene, but someone needs to talk about the squirrel scene. But it doesn't matter, because none of it has any bearing on the plot. I have now said this approximately 60 times, but let me repeat it once more for dramatic effect. The movie has no effect on the movie. There is no cause and effect. Wart and Merlin meet because of destiny. Nothing caused it, and nothing is affected by it. They train for the whole movie, and when the tournament in London comes, Merlin goes to the beach, which basically undoes all of the movie. I repeat, the movie does not affect the movie. The movie retcons itself, and that is actually quite impressive. With all that being said, I did actually enjoy watching this movie at some points. The training stuff is less tedious at the beginning because less of it has happened and you're less tired of it then. As it goes on, there's more of it, and then you're tired of it. I'm literally just explaining what being tired is. The fake climax is fairly enjoyable, even if the actual villain in it makes no sense. It is indeed an okay movie, and it goes above Snow White and below Lady and the Tramp. Technically, the next movie is The Jungle Book, but first, we have another non-Silver Age movie. The first ever official live-action and animation hybrid movie. Yes, first. And I think you know what it is.
That a spoonful of Clorox makes your temperature go down. Your temperature go down. Temperature go down.
So, let's just talk about this movie. It takes place in the wonderful United Kingdom, involves a magical nanny, some misbehaving children, a father who doesn't care about said children, and thanks to the actions of our magical nanny, the family is united and stronger than before. I didn't want to watch it because I thought it would be bad, but maybe I was wrong. I hadn't watched it in a while. And now I can officially say that Nanny McPhee is an amazing movie. What with the United Kingdom, the magical nanny, the misbehaving children, the father who doesn't care about said children, and thanks to the actions of our magical nanny, a family that is united and stronger than before. It truly is an original concept for a movie, and it is amazing. The effects are fairly decent, the characters are all consistently enjoyable to watch. The plot follows a standard cause and effect structure, which is a very strange thing to specify because most good movies would, right? And none of the characters insist on belting out into song every 10 minutes, because if that happened, that would be very annoying. It seems like every character that had an issue at the beginning of the movie had that issue solved in a satisfying way. And when Nanny McPhee had to leave and they begged her not to, even though they knew that she had to, it was indeed a moment with emotion in mind. Truly spectacular. Compare that to the dumpster fire that takes place more than a century afterward. Mary Poppins. How dare this abomination steal an original idea from a certified 19th century hood classic? The effects are absolutely horrible, and the people don't fit into the animated backgrounds at all. The only meaningful part of the whole animated section is the penguin part, just because the penguins are cool. But even that doesn't contribute to the overall movie, because more than half doesn't even follow the cause and effect structure. They do one thing, and stop. Do another thing, and stop. Cause a riot at the bank, and it ends. Only one character that had an issue at the beginning had it solved by the end, that being the father, and it was not done in a satisfying way at all. They keep singing songs, and the only reason people remember them is because they were tricked into watching this movie thinking that it would be something as brilliant as Nanny McPhee, but it wasn't. And that's why when this movie ended, I did not feel like the writers and directors had any emotion in mind, because the only emotions I felt were exhaustion and misery. It's truly astonishing how a movie made in the 1850s was better than one made in the 1960s, but that's just what happens when you steal an idea. Unacceptable. This movie goes below Peter Pan and above Bambi. It's just so long. 2.5 hours. This is like the length of Infinity War, and nothing happens. Imagine if Infinity War was just Thanos going to, get one Infinity Stone, but he stops and talks to every villager he meets along the way. Imagine if the endless pointlessness of the sword and the stone was stretched to twice its normal length. That's what we're dealing with here. Extremely bad. Goodbye.
I wanna be like you.
Okay, for real, we need to talk about this next movie. It's got a boy who was somehow separated from his parents and is then adopted by animals and raised in the jungle. The conflict between humans and animals is also central to this story. What do I think about this movie? I thought it was okay. Tarzan really was an incredibly average movie. Although I can't believe that the Jungle Book completely stole its ideas. If I had a nickel for every time I made that joke, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Seriously though, the Jungle Book was the last Disney movie made before Walt himself died, and that really shows here, and it's only gonna show more once we get to the later movies. Because this movie is just short of a perfect storm of getting every single thing right. I don't know if perfect storm is the right expression, but it felt right for the sentence and I didn't feel like thinking of any other way to describe it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that by this point, Walt had learned a lot from his previous mistakes, and had pretty much nailed the formula for how to make a good animated movie, which is really annoying, because now I'm wondering what the Black Cauldron could have looked like if it was, good. So let's go through the traditional segments and determine whether they work. So, usually, animation, as always, so it's pretty good. The jungle backgrounds are really nice, and it seems like the animators in the Disneyland sweatshops finally figured out how to make Xerox penciled-in animation work. I still prefer the old way, obviously, but hey, if it saves that much money and time, I am willing to make concessions. Again, is that the right expression? None of the character designs are particularly bad, although I did notice that they kept repeating either the same or a similar animation of Bagheera. He's walking to the left, he stops, and he kind of turns his head around. Next time you watch the movie, just go through and count. I saw a few, but I can't say that my eyes were glued to the screen or anything. Regardless, I'll give the movie a check for animation. Then, there are the characters, and I can't say I really hate any of them. Bagheera is fine, Baloo is good, Shere Khan is a respectable villain, King Louie has a nice song, the vultures are the Beatles, which was obviously intentional, but I very much appreciated it, and all of the elephants fulfill their role, I guess, as well as they could. Kaa might be the worst, just because his voice creeps me out. Actually, no, Mowgli is the worst. He's a whiny and pathetic loser, and he has a dumb voice. That's literally me. I don't want to be reminded of me. That's like the ultimate punishment. But, yeah, I suppose that the character section gets a check, too. Song section, really quick. They were good. First time that a majority of the songs were good, and according to my calculations, that's good, so it gets a check. And finally, there's the plot. First of all, if you think the plot is dumb, that's not on Disney because someone else wrote this as a book. With that being said, I think the plot is dumb, considering there basically is none, and the whole thing other than the last 10 minutes is meeting new characters and then leaving them behind. However, even though the whole thing was basically filler, I guess it wasn't as bad as the filler from previous movies, and I only say that because I never actually paused this movie and went to do something else while watching it, which was a first. If I had to explain why, I'd probably say something about good characters and good animation and other gibberish nonsense, but the truth is, my computer was dead and I couldn't distract myself. But whatever, it still gets a check overall. So, that's 4 checks out of 4. Which proves the point that I previously made, and duh, because otherwise I wouldn't have made it. This one is pretty easy to rank though. It goes below Make Mine Music and above Lady and the Tramp. Even though the plot was okay, I do think a bit less of it would have been better. And with that, we have finished today's movies. Here is the current ranking. Coming in 21st place, Gay Purr-ee. Working up, The Three Caballeros, Fantasia, Alice in Wonderland, Bambi, Mary Poppins, Peter Pan, Saludos Amigos, Melody Time, Pinocchio, Fun and Fancy Free, Snow White, The Sword and the Stone, Lady and the Tramp, The Jungle Book, Make Mine Music, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, 101 Dalmatians, Cinderella, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. How was that still first? Whatever, I still stand by it. So, what happens next? Well, now that Walt Disney is out of the equation, 2 things happen. Firstly, the new Disney movies are bad. If any Disney movies for the next 2 decades make it into the top half of the list, I will be shocked. And secondly, people knew that the first thing was going to happen, so they made their own animation studios. For example, the infamous Don Bluth. Whether that's good or bad, I will leave that up to you. For now though, it's clear that we're going down an interesting path. So, as they say in Espanol, adios.